Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show, Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world class Asian leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives who can provide insights and wisdom which will inspire and ignite conversations. This is your host, Priyanka Komala. Do subscribe to us on Curryup Startup Podcast on our YouTube channels and your favorite podcast streaming platforms so you can stay tuned on our wonderful episodes and our lineup of guests. And today I have a very fabulous guest with me, Rama Saripalle, who's joining us from California in the Bay Area. Hi, Rama. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Priyanka. Thank you so much for hosting me here.
Rama, it's such a pleasure to host you. And Rama is an empathetic, people-centric enthusiast, a challenger, a helper, and a professional who's so focused on customer success. She has several initiatives that are focused on women in technology. She has a nonprofit that helps on diversity and inclusion as well. And she's an amazing speaker. I'm so excited to have you on the show, Rama, as somebody who can guide us through principles of success on delving into customer obsession and customer passion.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, for a nice introduction. I hope I can actually do justice to all the listeners whom you are engaging to listen to their advices or whatever I can share based on my experiences. It has been almost 25 years in the industry, so it definitely is a long experience.
That's awesome. So, to our listeners, there are three key topics that we're going to delve into. One is, how do you build customer trust? And Rama has key techniques that she uses based on her personal experiences through music and meditation. So, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And two, what's a key skill set that you'll have to build to engage in storytelling? Because as you deal with executives and your C-suite leaders, how do you gain their buy-in through storytelling is very critical. And three, something that I really admire about Rama is how do you constantly challenge yourself and deal with the unknown? And on top of that, we'll discuss a little bit more about the women in tech initiatives that she's leading as well and get some insights on what's in store for Rama.
Sure.
So Rama, go ahead.
I said, let's go ahead.
That's awesome. Hey, we're on the same page here. So let's start with your childhood. You grew up in Jamshedpur, which is in the northern part of India.
Yes.
Anybody that has heard about Tata Steel, one of the biggest companies in India.
Yeah.
So you have some legacy connections towards your grandparents working there. And then you've moved to Hyderabad in the southern part of India for your graduate studies. So tell us about, how do you see both sides of India and a little bit about your nostalgic childhood memories to begin with?
So that's a nice question because, I grew up in a very small township of Tata Steel. It brought diverse culture because people from all over India in those days when my grandparents moved, jobs and, not just getting government jobs, but getting jobs in the private sector was a big deal because India was going through the freedom struggle and all of that our grandparents have seen. So for them, sustaining the family and getting into any job was a big challenge. So they moved to Jamshedpur with the intent that they will be working. And I'm not sure if they had the intent to stay there for their entire life. But if you see how our grandparents' generation was, they believed in staying at one place, building that they wanted to be very stuck to one place. So because they were scared of a change at that time, because for them, family and everything was security. I would say financial security was very important. So my parents were born and raised in Jamshedpur as well. So for a long time, I visited Andhra Pradesh, where my grandparents came from, for the first time after my 10th board exams. So for us, when we were growing up, 10th was a board, and then 11th and 12th was like inter college, and then we go into the undergrad studies. So I never visited Andhra before that. So I know that when we were growing up, because of your last name, people would have that distinction that you are South Indian, but I grew up with the thing that I'm South Indian, but I always considered myself to be more Bihari than South Indian. And we spoke Hindi more fluently than Telugu, which is our native language. So when I went to Andhra for the first time after 10th, I realized my accent is very different, like how if kids are born in America and they go to India, they feel a little out of place. So I had all those anxieties. My Telugu was always made fun of, my accent and all of that. But it was nice to see and meet my grandparents, cousins, their siblings, and build that connection. So it was very nice to know that. And by the time I went for my undergrad in Hyderabad, both my uncles lived in Hyderabad by then. So it was a little more of a family around. So it was a little easy of the transition. So even though when we grew up in Jamshedpur, our upbringing was very much because of our grandparents, very much root to our South Indian culture as well. So we had best of both the worlds, I'd say.
I'm glad you instilled a lot of values from your upbringing as part of your grandparents. Now, tell me this, Rama. Did your obsession with customer success start because of your childhood experiences living in a diverse community with different cultures and different kinds of people surrounding you?
I would say definitely because of Tata Steel. Because I remember as a child, my dad was very creative, and any slogan contest that would happen and all of that, my dad will bring it back home and say, "Hey, what do you think about it?" And I remember the first customer quote that we were working on that got accepted in Tata Steel was like, I think, "Customer first, har hal mein." It means customer first always in any situation. That kind of somehow, I know as a kid we always also make fun of, like, okay, when we say customer in Hindi, if you break it down, it's like customer. So but the person who is actually in lot of pain is a customer, that generally how that translates that to. But it kind of stuck in my mind forever that yes, customer is always the first person. And I was also very motivated with Mahatma Gandhi's quote when it says, like, if you don't have a customer, that means your business has no value. So who are you building the business for? So those were some of my childhood memories, and this customer first har hal mein, that slogan stayed with me forever. So that's how my motto also kind of developed, that yes, it's always customers.
It's very interesting, Rama, when childhood memories create a long lasting impact in how we shape ourselves. And I'm so glad, Tata Steels was such an impactful part of your childhood upbringing.
Yes, absolutely. And if
Now,
you see in Tata Steel, uh, even now when we are looking at Ratan Tata's quotes and all of that, I find him a very impactful leader in the community as well. And we grew up with, Rusi Modi, Ratan Tata, these kind of leaders being in a small town who made an impact on the world economy. It was not only for Jamshedpur. And if you read the history of Jamshedpur, J.N. Tata was Jamshedji Nausarwanji Tata, on whose name the entire city was named as Tata Nagar. Um, he was an exceptional leader when we look into the biography and all that. So it absolutely stayed with me forever.
and the Tatas are exemplary leaders that the world admires even to today. So great mentors to have at such an early stage of your life. Now, tell me this, Rama. You spoke about customer pain points and the quote that you rightly pointed out in Hindi. How did you pivot techniques such as music and meditation that are so close to your heart into handling customer pain points and creating them into success stories? Share a little bit about your success techniques there.
So, music has been my passion. I used to learn, however, now I have taken a small break from my learning experiences. But as I said, I had mentors in my life at every stage. So, I was learning music from Mahesh Kaleji. I'm a very novice in that, but uh, listening to him, like what he's saying, it related a lot to me in um, every part of not only business or professional thing, but even in the personal way. So he always used to say, one of the things he says is, music is not just what you sing, the note. It's not even the note, but these are the emotions that you're feeling. And that is so true. I mean, if you're not feeling that emotion inside, you will not be able to hit that note or what exactly needs to come out. So if you think about from customers perspective, if you don't have that emotion, what they are feeling or what they are going through. So even if you're trying to build a product, if your product does not resonate, that needs to resolve somebody's problem, then you don't have a product that you're going to sell. And if you're not selling some, and if you don't have something sellable, then you're not in the business. So um, few key things, like even when I think about customer success, like what is customer success? And it's a new terminology evolved over the years also. So how earlier we used to be like, okay, there is a very traditional pre-sales when you are engaging with customers, your prospects in selling, pitching your product, and then your prospect is convinced that, yeah, I want to buy. Now you're selling this product and you sold the product, and sales is done at that point. Then if the customer, and then it evolved as professional services. So if the customer wants that, okay, this product is a little bit complicated, I won't be able to deploy this, so I will buy some extra dollars, extra hours, for some more money, and then your professionals will come and deploy that. So now everything is about transaction. You are talking about money at every single point, but you made this product so that somebody can use it, right? You did not make the product because you're going to keep on making money on top of it. So where do you bridge that gap? So yes, sales sold that, and then there was another gap I felt that was, um and this was very relevant to working at NetApp when we had the professional services and we had sales. When I was brought into this key role to see what were the gaps, why customers bought such heavy dollars professional services, but they thought they never, and they used the hours, but they never thought they got the value out of the money. There's no ROI, there's no, what are we missing in the entire business? So when we looked into that, the entire gaps of the process, we felt that, yeah, we are not having a consistent thread between our teams and then the customer teams. So we are looking into, like when you go back to music, if there is a note or if there is a tune that you are thinking, there are different tunes happening, but then you are connecting them, connecting all the dots to make that tune. Now when you come back to the professional thing, you sold, and then you take your the team is gone, somebody new comes. So if you are trying to uh, impose new notes into the tune, you need to know what was the harmony. Did I understand? Do I know the previous notes to build upon the harmony? Or am I just introducing them something new, and then it becomes a completely different tune, or it could be out of tune, what we call in the music world. So that's what was happening. We were selling, the sales was gone, and then professional services came and they delivered what the customer said. No, 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 I wanted this. I don't know what I bought, but I wanted this to be delivered. Now the hours are done, and if sales goes and says, I need more hours, they'll say, no, I already spent so much. So the gap we tried to fix was, let me understand what sales sold. I need to be in those meetings to understand what is being sold. Now I am the bridge person to tell professional services, hey, these are the things that we sold. These are the use cases we are trying to solve. And now let's go work on it and keep on communicating also to the customer that yes, this, and ask them, and that's when it comes to the key listening skills. Ask them, is this confirm? Don't assume things, because then
No,
assumption is bad.
that's a great way of looking at things, and I love your analogy, Rama. Think of things as a musical tone, right? And one of the challenges that we face in the tech industry, especially, is you create a product and then you make a sale. That's the end of it. You move to your next client, trying to find your next prospect. But how do you nurture those relationships on an ongoing basis? As a customer success leader, that's very critical and a good, a lesson for
Yeah.
all leaders in the tech space, or no matter, not just the tech space, irrespective of the other domains. Now, you also brought up a critical point about active listening. And active listening is, it's very important when you're gaining customers' trust. What is one advice you would have for our listeners to build the active listening skill?
One advice is that, we all like to share our stories. We like to share what we know. But when we are sharing or when we are talking a lot, we are missing the key points what other person wants to tell. And this is not something I was evolved as, and as human beings we are not evolved as active listeners, because we are trying to tell our narrative to everybody. Like I want to be heard, because I always feel that, my god, I've heard these things so many times, now you listen to what I'm trying to say. And even in my friends group, I have a very close knit of friends group who keep me honest. It's like, and I used to have that habit, and I still have. Sometimes when I start answering, I don't know when to stop or when to pull myself back, and they tell me very honestly that this was my question, did you first understand my question? What I have learned from my friends is, rephrase the narrative and ask them, is this what you were trying to ask? Then think, like, at least try to internalize if the question was relevant, that, and if I have an answer to it. Not every question that needs to be answered. A lot of questions are for us for provoking points as well. I have very close and very good friends, and I'm so thankful that I have these kind of friends who keep me honest on a daily basis. Did you understand my question? And I'm like, okay, so tell me again, and that is when you build that trust and bond as well, when you are trying to listen to them. Because then they feel, yes, I was heard, yes, she understood what I'm trying to ask, and yes, now I'm trying to understand what she wants to say. Because when you understand others, they would want to understand you as well.
That's the critical part of active listening, and I really like that you brought it up, because we don't take time to pause and reflect. We always are in a reactive mode. When somebody says something, we want to get our word across rather than thinking for a second, do we really even need to share our opinions at this point? Should we just sleep over that idea, or take a step back and look at the issue holistically?
Yes. And also, I have a great boss and I have great mentors as well. Every person for whom I worked for, or my team, I like myself to be kept honest, and I want that checkpoint. And I want people to be very blunt with me. If I'm not understanding something, just please tell me on my face that I'm not understanding you, and I will step back and try to understand. And my husband also helps me a lot in all of that. So uh, one thing that my boss always emphasizes, when people are in the room are talking, we all have that habit, unconsciously and subconsciously, that we just want to, as soon as the question is fired, we want to just answer it. We don't want others to say first, we want us to put our point first. So if somebody is talking, then you would have seen or noticed it, that people just start talking over others. And I was reminded many times that, Rama, let others say, it's there, let's speak, let's hear them. And that is, I think, true mark of leadership, and that I have learned from a lot of my mentors and bosses, that listen to others first. I still have to develop a lot of that, what I'm telling you, but this is something that I'm trying to digest in my mind as well, that listen to others first.
Yeah, and it's a learning experience, right? Because all of us have this tendency to just speak on top of each other. But, a true hallmark of leadership is letting others' opinions be heard and being comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, Rama has close to 20 years of experience specializing in, these kinds of cross-functional programs, leadership, and she's worked across wide variety of industries, be it with NetApp or Arm Pressure Data that she's now working for. And her expertise from a technology perspective is with software as a service, SaaS, virtualization, data analytics, data storage, embedded and mobile software systems. So you work on a lot of cutting edge technologies, and customer success is crucial in all these different roadmaps that you chart for your clients. So kudos. I wanted to make sure you're aware of the impact that you're creating already.
Thank you so much.
Now, you constantly challenge yourself, and I understand that you love doing that, being in the unknown. Tell us a little bit more about how do you deal with that uncertainty on an ongoing basis?
One thing, I would say that one thing that comes to my mind is when you look into the four quadrants of any problem solving skill, there are knowns, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, there are unknown unknown, and then unknown known. If you look at the four quadrants, the known knowns are easy because you already know and you know what is your um, how you need to work on that. When it is unknown known or known unknown, in those boxes are also you are fine because you know there is something known. At least if there is some unknown part, there's something known as well. But when it's completely unknown, what I have learned in the last a few years, at least recent years, I'd say, as part of my evolving as a in the leadership role, there is no control that you have on the unknowns, right? So, and sometimes you need to try something that you have been avoiding because these are unknown things. It is our human psychology that I don't want to do it, because I have that fear I will fail. And something that I tell to my team members also, that it is okay to fail, but be sure that you own that failure. Because yeah, fine, I did not know how to react or how to take this challenge, and then I tried my best, but give your level best. That is one thing that I would always say, and I always try to do. Give my level best to what is happening right now and how I should be taking this particular challenge, and what can be the possible solutions. Ask for help. One thing that I have felt, even talking to my teenage kids, that we are all shy of asking for help. So we never want to show that I am weak, or because I'm perceived in a certain way, I don't want to show that I am not that. I want to be up to the mark. I mean, say if you are calling me a leader in the industry, I want to stay up to the mark that yes, I'm a leader. But there is, leadership is a vast area. This, like, we are all leaders in our own ways, and we are all always constantly learning. Even if you look into Bill Gates, when you read his all the stories, or you look into Michelle Obama's book, she has always been learning and she's always open. So that is one thing we need to develop, is open mindedness, the open mindset that we should have, that yes, this is a new challenge, I have never dealt with this before, but let me see what could be the possible solutions and how I can overcome this. So sometimes you have to take your own advice, you have to learn that. And also when you are mentoring people or you have team members and they are your best best people who teach you more, when you are talking to leaders, yeah, they will tell you something about from their own experiences. But when you are mentoring people, you see that, oh my god, this challenge I never came across, because they are asking me question, what are the possible creative solutions, and then you imply that on yourself. So one thing I'd say is be open, definitely be open, open mindedness. And then key is to ask for help. It doesn't, since just because that I'm at a leadership role does not mean that I know all the answers. So I should be able to ask and implement that.
That's wonderful advice, Rama. Because asking for help doesn't mean that it's a sign of weakness. It's more about you have an open mindset to learn about it. And the fear of unknown always kicks in, right? So you just can't be certain about all the outcomes, but doing your level best, asking for help, and seeing how that tune can be set in the right chord, so
Yeah.
you can get the best possible outcome. A tune that you want to hear is
Yes.
something that we always have to remind ourselves. And that's like a great analogy that I'm going to remember personally for myself as well.
Yeah, see, even when we are building the tune, it's okay that when you are learning, it's okay for you to let the tune go wrong. This is not your final outcome. This is not your product. So if you are stuck upon the outcome and a product, then is where you will have more problems.
Now let's talk about that part of it. One of the key skill set that every leader needs to have is the ability to storytell. Getting buy-in from your C-suite leaders and executives on the pitch that you have. And for you, it's your clients when you're helping them with your roadmaps and how your product fits into their vision. What are three tips that you would share with our listeners on how do you perfect your art of storytelling?
Okay. Uh, Interesting. I think everyone is a storyteller. If it's just that they need the audience. So if you hear more to the kids around you, you know, their laughter tells a story. When they're crying, it tells you a story. Their persuasion skills tells you a story. How to negotiate. You know, there's one incident that comes to my mind. When my son was very young, he was like probably 1.5, 2 years old, and he used to. It's like, you know, first kid, it's very cute, cuddly, and you're like always invested. So we used to take him to Toys R Us, and he would always play with the toys. And then when we are coming back home, he would come back with us. So at the same time, we had other friends whose kids were turning 1 and, you know, or 2 or whatever, their birthdays would come. So one time we went and we bought a birthday gift for another kid along with him. This is the first time probably it clicked to his mind that, oh, this is a store and you can pay some money and you can take it home. Until then, probably he always thought that you come here, you play with the toys, and you go back home. And we always thought that, oh my God, we have such a cute kid and such an obedient kid who never asks us to buy anything. So we never bought something because he did not ask for it. So then he was very obsessed about Power Rangers. And then he said, can I buy this? And by then, we had bought quite a few Power Rangers for him. And we thought, like, you know, you already have it. He said, no, no, I don't have the green Power Ranger. And we said, no, as usual, you know, the parenting thing. So when we are at the counter, he had this Power Ranger, like he was hiding in his back, and then he puts the Power Ranger on the front, and he tells to my husband, Abhigyan's dad, can I come with you to Abhigyan's home? And we were like, what? Such a cute way to persuade us that I want to buy this toy. And my husband, of course, bought that toy for him. Oh, sorry, I didn't go to the store. Actually, I sent them to get the gift because I had something to do at home. So when they came back home, and I was very upset with my husband that why did he buy another Power Ranger for him? And I said, this is what he told me. And how could I say no? So you need, what it only tells you is how you bring that emotion. And that is what is the empathy part when people talk about the whole 9 yards in the leadership, that you have to have that empathy. So when you have those key traits, you know, active listening, when you're empathetic, you are understanding other situation, when you are like, you know, more into focused on how people perceive things, what they want. When you know what they want, then it becomes more easier for you to deliver on that.
That's a great way of looking at things. You know, the crux of the issue is trying to understand what others want and
Yeah,
see, you know, how do we navigate that situation and get the possible outcomes. And, you know, as you mentioned in your son's case, such a cute way of persuading at such a young age, right? Rather than saying, buy me this toy, that'll evoke a different kind of emotion in parents. But
yeah,
asking from the toy's perspective, if the toy can come home, you know, that evokes a different kind of an empathetic reaction towards your
yeah,
kid.
yeah. And I
Uh,
was just reading about some empathy very recently about this is a very great story I want to share. There's this person, she was talking about her husband goes to buy a car, but they have this an autistic kid salesperson actually, and they were buying like a real high-end car. So salesperson actually did some research on the buyers, and he got to know that this person has an autistic kid. So he did like speech therapy, and so he basically understood what the problem they have. So when they walked into the store, the person talked more about their kid and, you know, the ways and avenues and what are they doing. He was more interested in how they're trying to solve their problem and everything. Towards the end, when it was about the car, husband said that, no, 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 that's fine, I think. And he turned to his wife and said, I think we are convinced on this car, right? Didn't we decide on this model? Let's go with it, you know. So the salesperson's job was to sell the car, but he sold them the dream that if you are in this car, this is more safe for your kid, what are the features your kid is going to enjoy. It made it more like a complete package why I should buy from from my kid's perspective, where I'm more emotionally vested actually. So those kind of stories like really inspire me a lot to think more in these areas.
That's very true. And, I'm glad to see you're constantly learning to see, how sales pitch just doesn't have to be a cold call, right? It's more
Correct.
about researching your customer and trying to find ways where your customers, your end consumers, really feel that emotional connection to buy your product.
Yeah,
Now, tell
absolutely.
me this. Now, tell me this, Rama. Uh, you have such a wonderful portfolio of work in the technology space, but you're always focused on spearheading initiatives that give back to the community. You have a nonprofit that's focused on women in technology and diversity and inclusion. Tell us about your work with that board. What's your vision that you have?
So the on the nonprofit side, we had the vision that we started with a simple goal that help a cause that helps women. More from and sometimes another thing is when we talk more about women, it sounds very feminist that gosh, you guys are women and then you're only helping women. It's all about a community. I agree. I completely agree that there's no competition to leave. You cannot leave men behind. You are part of the ecosystem, and it has to be mutually inclusive. And you cannot leave somebody. It's not a race where you are trying to leave somebody behind and run ahead of them. It is just trying to bring that change. We are in America and we are very blessed to be in such an environment where our husbands, our men in our family are so supportive. They always want you to progress further and further. There is no They never feel bad that, oh my god, you have gone to this level and like the husbands are left behind. There was a time when my daughter was born. He stayed home for an year because I had a very challenging role, and I used to go to city and it was far off, so he worked from home for some time. He took some time off. But then, give me 1 second.
Sure, go ahead. It's very important when you have supportive family and an ecosystem of support. And
Right. Excuse me.
an ecosystem of women and men that help you in your process of giving birth, during those stages of maternity as well. Those are really ways in which you can support women to get back to their careers. And it's interesting when, I did some research about how COVID is actually impacting a lot of women's careers, because we're forced to be our best, both professionally, personally, with kids, homeschooling, taking care of our families. And that puts a huge burden on women. And it's going to be interesting to see how the pandemic is really going to shape us uh, once it's over and we're back into our professional careers, and how life is going to be a race. Are we left behind, or how things are going to shape up for the future of women as well?
Agreed. Completely agree. And I wouldn't say that women can do all these things if they don't have the support from family, from your husband, your spouse, your parents. Parents are the backbones always. So I always think that when we are working on women in technology, it is not to leave somebody behind, but and this is something that kind of stuck with me, and I'm bringing Ruth Ginsburg in the discussion because I'm very sad that we lost her just a couple of days back. And she I have watched her movie, the biopic that was made on her, inspired me to the core. She was the first one to go to the law school where there were no men, there were no women. She was the first one. And she said one thing, I don't remember the exact quote, but she said that if you are a lawyer and if you are practicing the law, then you are making a good lawyer. But if you take that, just like a plumber, but if you take that opportunity, and if you want to be a true professional, you will do something beyond and give it back to the less fortunate people. We are fortunate, and this is one thing one of my boss told me, and she had been a great mentor to me as well for a lot of years, and we are always in touch. when I had come to this country, I was very shy, very introvert, and I know that people don't believe about that about me, because now I'm like always chatty and I'm fun loving and I'm like always talking in most of the places. She told me that what you see now, and this is like almost a decade back, what you see now as a women's stance is very changed, because for them, they also had to fight maternity leave. There was no maternity leave defined at some time. I cannot imagine my life to be like that. But if somebody did not fight earlier, I wouldn't have this opportunity either. What I am living is because somebody else fought this battle for me generations back. They did not say that if this is not impacting me directly right now, I'm not going to fight for it. They did not have that vision. They had the vision that in years and generations to come, women should not face this. And when I talk about women in technology very passionately is because I don't want the next generation, next to next generation, or the generations to come to face what we face. Like there are very few women in the top leadership. They talk about the percentages. They talk about very few women of color to be in top leadership skills, leadership roles. They talk about very few women also to be going towards the STEM. So now that STEM thing has taken up, and when I used to talk to my own daughter, that's okay if she's not interested, but don't make it that girls are supposed to play with dolls and guys are supposed to play with cars. That is absurd, according to me. You cannot keep people in boxes.
Gender stereotyping is something that we all have to break, barriers. And for us as women who immigrate from a different country and create a niche for ourselves and a mark for ourselves as women, women of color, having that supportive ecosystem of bosses, mentors, our partners, family, that's very crucial. Because as a women, we go through a lot of challenges, be it with profession or childbirth, raising well-mannered kids. A lot of onus is on us to be the best version of a super mom who is like great in absolutely a lot of things. And I'm so glad women like you step up, to break those barriers and continue to break those barriers for the next generation.
Absolutely. And I think it is my responsibility to do that. And I wouldn't say that men don't do anything. They do a lot, and they are always silent about it. I also feel that we as women, we talk a lot about what we have done, and rightfully so, because in the past they never used to speak. So, when you look into the whole thing, it becomes like that did not happen then, that's why I will do right now. That is also wrong to base something based on the past. Be in the current moment, see how you are being supported. I know that a lot of time I'm asked like, why do you have to have like all these women only parties? Why don't you have parties with men? But sometimes you need that kind of a support system, and sometimes you need to have all of other kind of support system. And that's why I keep saying that men are part of the ecosystem very well. I mean, if they wouldn't, right, fine, I'm fighting for all the women initiatives, but if they do not support, I wouldn't be able to go forward. We are going forward because they're also listening. I know that it has to happen to an extensive level. I know that I am very much privileged, but I cannot assume that because I am privileged, everyone around me are privileged. I need to understand that there are lot of people, that I would say like at least 70% women in the various part of the world. And I cannot also generalize, because it is not happening in America, it's not happening anywhere else. Even when I look back in India, women go through a lot of gender discrimination. They go through a lot of other things, not only discrimination, color discrimination. Why do we have all these products to make you look fairer? What does it have to do with your personality? That is something, it is natural, and you do. And one thing I also feel, that when you're going against your nature, you will break things. At the end of the day, you are not happy. And same thing, like, why stereotype people on color? Why stereotype people on gender? Women are the only people who talk about, oh, she's fat, she's slim, she's skinny. All these definitions are only for women. Why? Why they are not? When you talk about men leaders, you are talking about, oh my god, they are so that their leadership is amazing, their thought process is very amazing, they are thought leaders. Why women are not thought leaders? Why women are bucketed into things? So there is a long way to go, but we should not forget that we have come a long way as well.
Yeah,
So both
that's
ways.
that's very true. And you know how I see men as allies in this process, Rama, because they're very crucial to the ecosystem. Men leaders hold top leadership positions.
Yeah,
And change has to come only when they're willing to listen. And I've had great mentors myself in my professional life who are men who
right.
believed in me. Like a mutual friend, Bill Edgar, who was my former boss and a great colleague of yours as well. Men like that who are so supportive of fellow women and always are willing to push us to get to the next level and believe in our innate talents. We
Yeah,
need men like these.
absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes I feel that women um are not that open as men are. Like my current boss is also like amazing. He believes in me, he believes in my work and all. But sometimes in my past, when I had women bosses, I faced more of that discrimination, or I wouldn't say discrimination, but that potential is like, okay, you are not as like up to the mark or something, because they are trying to compare from themselves. So every individual is different. You cannot compare anybody. I cannot compare my own kids amongst them each. You cannot even compare twins who are born together and like have the same composition. It
Right.
doesn't happen that way, so that is one thing I feel. And I would not again bucket that because women leaders are bad. And this I keep on hearing, oh, you should never have a female boss. Female bosses are like terrible and all that. And I'm like, oh my god, it's almost like you're telling me that I'm a bad boss. So I
Right.
want to know what is that is not working. And most of the challenge I have realized is people don't want to communicate. They don't want to go and tell what is not working between them and their boss, or ask what is something that you are expecting out of me, so for me to be a good team player in your team. So a
Right.
lot of things can be solved through communications.
As we talk, there are a lot of issues at hand that still have to be, resolved, and that happens only when everybody takes a very open stand in terms of listening to each other's uh, challenges.
Yeah.
But the other part that I want to highlight is it's not about gender. It's about the personality traits, our
Yeah.
perspective that gets sometimes stereotyped into how you perceive a certain gender of bosses. But overall, as you mentioned, if you have active communication and listening, that'll be the holy grail solution for a lot of our challenges out there.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your candid
You
insights.
put it so very well. It is not about gender. It is about everyone has a different traits. Personality is so apt on that. I'm glad you summarized it well.
Thank you. So we have a quick tidbit from our listeners. I just want to highlight some of our feedback that we're getting from our listeners. We have the Malliard Report. Jim Malliard, who's one of our famous talk show hosts. He's wishing us a great day. Thanks, Jim, for joining us. And we have another comment from our listener, Satya, who says, awesome interview. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rama, for being a wonderful guest on our show. We do have a fun rapid fire round for you before we wrap up the show. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
So you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the following: role model,
Ruth Ginsburg.
very true and an admirable leader for
Absolutely.
generations to come.
She's on my mind right now because we lost her recently. So she's like absolutely on my mind. Always has been.
What is one fun thing about Rama that you haven't shared with anyone?
I am like an open book. People know everything about me. What would be one fun thing that people don't know about me? Um, what would be one fun thing? I'm very fun loving, probably.
How do you feel when you have these fun moments in your life?
I am always about fun, even at work, even with customers. I'm always joking. And one thing that my grandfather probably instilled in me was like, when we were very young, and I know it's a rapid fire, but I'm going into a story. When we
Go
were
for it.
very young, my grandfather would always ask me a question, and I would, if I'm responding it in a very witty way, he would, and if he likes the answer, then he would laugh. And if I am not witty, then he would say, "What's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well today? No, come on, give me a witty answer." So he instilled it so much in me that I cannot, just like I cannot keep up, hold up my tongue. It's like something happens and I have to crack a joke. So
You
I
know,
love it. I love to be a fun-loving person.
having that sense of humor is very essential in our lives because we take ourselves too seriously. And sometimes you're like, it's a short life. Why do you have to, think about everything as a big mountain rather
Like,
than a molehill?
I know, I know.
What is your native language? And one word to describe yourself in it.
Wow. My native language actually is Telugu. But since, as I said, I grew up in East and Hindi was, and I studied in Hindi medium as well. So Hindi was my more common, I'd say, native language. How would I define one word? Um, this is what my dad says, so I'd just say that he calls me a Sherni. That means a tigress, and so basically, he sees me that gentle, like in the how the tiger walks slow and like very gentle and all that, but he sees the fierce force in me. So that's kind of coming to my mind right now.
Absolutely. That's such an amazing way to look at yourself, especially as dads have a critical role in terms of boosting our self-confidence as young girls, daughters. And I'm so glad your dad is still today a staunch pillar of support for you in seeing the fierceness, but still the gracious side of you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rama. It was such a pleasure having you on our show, Curryup Startup Podcast, and we really loved all the free-flowing discussion that we had. Right from how do we be an active listener to all the way about the gender biases that we see, the work that you're doing with women in tech initiatives to break a lot of barriers. So you're such a cheerleader for all of us, and I wish you the very best in terms of seeing continued success with all your endeavors.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, and thanks so much. Actually, I know you mentioned about Bill, and Bill was very instrumental in having me introduce you to you. And he said, "Oh, she's doing amazing job in the women in technology. You should be talking to her. You should be meeting her." And I'm so glad that we met and we have the common interest to bring the women in technology forward.
Awesome. And quick shout out to our wonderful colleague and boss and mentor, Bill Edgar. I'm going to make sure he listens to the show.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Rama, thanks so much. So to our listeners, Rama Saripalle, who's an amazing guest on our show, she shared a lot of interesting insights. Let's talk about the three key takeaways. So the three key takeaways on our Curryup Startup podcast with Rama Saripalli today is: one, how do you build customer trust? Think of it as a musical note. You need to understand, right, everything from the sales model all the way to what the customer really needs to make sure the tune is still intact and is wonderful and soothing to hear. So think of that music analogy every time to hit the right chord with your customers. And two, skill sets that you need to be a successful leader is: one, be an active listener, let others speak up. Two, be empathetic. Really understand what is that the other person wants to achieve and see how you can get the possible outcome. And three, be open, have an open mindset. And the other key takeaway that we have is always have fun in your life. Be witty, be humorous, life is short. So try to help each other succeed, be it through mentorship, just having fun with your own teams as you're handling critical challenges, and help other women and men succeed. Like the nonprofit that Rama has for her women in tech initiatives. With that being said, irrespective of our genders, it's how we respond to situations, how empathetic that we are towards solving other person's problems is very critical. And we as leaders need to have an open mindset, irrespective of being male or female, in terms of helping others succeed and be a cheerleader for generations to come. Until another episode with another interesting guest, this is your host, Priyanka Komala, signing off from Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world-class Asian leaders, entrepreneurs to inspire and ignite conversations. Again, do subscribe to our YouTube channel for Curryup Startup Podcast and your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day.